So here we are, back at this old chestnut again, the goodest of doctors, apparently. But since the last transgender episode that became a big internet meme for a bit and then sort of petered out when people moved on, did the good doctor improve with its trans narrative down the line? Did it in fact manage to pull out a second trans episode that was better than the first and took on board the flaws of the initial one? Does it show Sean Murphy adopting that learning about trans people from the first episode, that coming to understand how trans people exist, and give us a presentation of him that is more initially willing to accept a character's gender identity? Those are the big questions at heart here, and the ones we are going to answer with this look at Season 4's Episode 9, Irresponsible Salad Bar Practices, released in the early months of 2021. And because I already did my whole bit on the frankly worrying way that the good doctor handles autism and worked with Autism Speaks in my previous good doctor video, which you can find linked below, that means we can just get straight into analysing the episode. So let's do that. Now, at the very beginning, we immediately get introduced to our patient of interest, as well as a bunch more doctor characters who were not around the last time, so I guess this show has a pretty high rotation rate for characters, seeing as it's only been about 2 seasons. And we do need to stop immediately, because yes, it is important to note that this is a trans man storyline, with the trans man being played by a trans man, namely Emmett Preciado, who has been in a few roles in shows like Rebel and Good Trouble.
Straight guys are always horsing around. It's the only way they're allowed to show affection. Our first murder case. This is big.
This is an important piece of information because having a trans person playing a trans person is a good first step for a lot of shows on the path to showing a realistic and accurate portrayal of the community, which speaks to the troubles that face us, especially relevant in regards to the medical system, as many trans people have experiences with that entity. A trans actor does not indicate that it is guaranteed to be good representation, but it does show that the showrunners and writers have those connections to base their narratives off, and that they are open to the possibility to consultation from trans people to ensure that the stories they craft are not the same tired stereotypes that we have become worryingly used to, a la a frankly upsetting number of the episodes I have covered on this channel. To further this point, I noticed while checking this all up on IMDb that the IMDb rating for this episode was a pretty low 5.2. Pretty low for The Good Doctor, which mostly coasts along around the 7 mark. And when I checked the first featured review on there, it said, used to be one of my favourites, but critical race theory, transgenders and pregnant men all in one episode is a bit too much to take. I hope this series finds its way back to the roots. Now, that is the kind of review that I find reassuring for the evolution of this show, in regards to how it engages with the minorities the medical practice overwhelmingly has screwed over in the past, and that medical shows can help to alleviate by showing their struggles. Thank you, Ursino537-635-94342, for giving me an initial bolster of hope for this trans episode. Anyway, the guy in question has a tumour that he is getting checked for. It doesn't seem to be too much of a problem, as the doctors say it's minor and dealable, and we learn that the medical information for this guy in the hospital databanks still lists him as a female, something that the medical staff is apologetic for.
You deserve a medal.
Our medical record system, on the other hand, it has you listed as female.
And the trans guy mentions how it's probably linked to the fact that he has to get pap smears done, which outdated systems perceive as an only female thing. The software needs an update, and the doctors commit to changing that information going forwards. Immediately, we have stuff to work with and talk about here. This is something that happens a lot in hospitals. There are perceived elements that are tied intrinsically to gender, something which is not essential as people might argue, because the future of the medical practice is individualized healthcare that allows for each patient to be taken as their own set of factors rather than having a doctor apply general knowledge in a way that can be harmful and even kill people thanks to assumptions, but is also not great for the well-being of trans patients, who can deal with emotional issues that affect their trust in the system when it is not updated to reflect the realities of their identity, that can lead to people making misleading conclusions about what they need or what they are. In respect to this, the Good Doctor shows us what a good doctor would do here. They listen to the patient, they express sympathy, and are willing to fix the system in a way that will give that patient a better experience next time they come through a hospital.
Software clearly needs a trans update. Deep breath.
I'll fix it so everything is correct going forward.
And none of this is treated as a big deal. None of it is made out to be a huge moment. No swelling music or nothing, because it's just expressed as normal, as how this should be handled. No fuss, no muss, no hassle. Just a quick, easy fix. And the same goes for asking what the patient's gender and pronouns are. Question, response, thanks for the asking, moving on.
Please confirm your gender and pronouns.
Male, he, him, his. Thanks for asking.
We're the ones with the messed up software.
This is how simple it can be to involve trans people in society. How ridiculously basic it is to just evolve standard practices to include the community in a way that doesn't shun or demonize or make us appear abnormal. In literally the first minute, I gotta say that the Good Doctor is showing a marked development for trans inclusion. I do really want to see the Good Doctor himself, though, Sean Murphy, interact with the patient, because he was the one whose journey to understanding trans people was a center point of that previous episode.
I don't know what it feels like to be anyone but me.
Me too.
And so seeing how that has actually and actively changed the way that he engages with trans patients would be very useful for seeing an in-universe change. However, there is a complication, because this is a medical show. Have you ever seen a medical show before? Complications are the bread and butter of the whole industry, as it turns out that the papillary tumor has doubled in size over the past 2 weeks. Thing that I can confidently say as a non-medical person isn't good. Oh, and so everyone knows, the episode also has a little feature of how hard it is to be an administrator for a hospital who is an Asian woman compared to a white guy. The difficulty that comes with the taking of needed therapy, and how it affects your career and people's perceptions of you thanks to that identity.
I don't think that seeing a therapist will affect your career.
Says the white guy.
Which I think is more of the woke agenda that the review people on IMDb were mad about. Maybe Good Doctor really has swung it around, especially considering this is a show watched by old white people mostly, and is kind of a good way to introduce these concepts to your grandparents through the TV they love to sit in front of and watch cable. Weirdos, am I right, fellow young people? What's this cable they speak of? What do we watch these days? TikTok? Is that still the new hot thing? Skibbity toilet? Is that Chugi or Chuji or however you pronounce it? Oh look, it's the constantly looming and dreadful reminder of my own mortality through the introduction of progressively younger and younger people who are part of new generations even further removed from mine. I'm now 3 generations old. How is that possible? I used to be the hot new one on the block. Now you've got all these Gen Alphas walking around. God, I'm going to be 30 this year. Anyway, here he is, the goodest doctor, who by this point is no longer being based on consultation from Autism Speaks, thank God, stepping into the case to not really do anything, actually. It kind of seems like Dr. Murphy has his own plotline this episode, but at the very least, he genders the trans man correctly. The trans man whose name is Rio. I don't think anyone has mentioned that so far, but I can't keep calling the dude the trans man like I'm not showing him respect. However, we also get another hint from this scene. A hint that shows how the doctors being aware of Rio's trans status allows them to better tailor their responses to his tumor problems by incorporating their understanding of the medical history that he has.
Where the tumor could be reacting to the high levels of hormones being produced elsewhere in the body.
The patient is a transgender man.
Do you see? Do you see the necessity now of making a non-hostile medical environment for trans people? It means that we can share our history of hormones and surgeries and whatnot, and that has relevance to other possible complications that might pop up. If instead we have to be guarded thanks to, oh, I don't know, laws that ban trans people from taking HRT and turn it into an underground industry, revealing that information into a possible crime, or bigotries that make being trans a horrible thing that you don't want to reveal, well, that might lead to some deaths and medical problems. Which I understand that the Republican politicians currently using that as a bludgeon against trans people don't actually care about trans people dying. In fact, they welcome it and consider it great to get these filth out of their clean cis, clean white, clean straight, clean neighborhoods.
I represent a constituency that doesn't want that filth in Oklahoma.
But this show isn't for the politicians. It's for the old people who might vote for them unless they see different points of view that affect how they perceive such issues. We meet Rio's fiancée, and the doctors are looking at doing an ultrasound, because the fact that Rio hasn't had bottom surgery means that it's plausible he could have got pregnant, especially dependent upon his usage of hormones around the time that him and his partner were engaging in coitus. Testosterone does make it harder, nay, almost impossible, to procreate, thanks to the fact that it effectively stops periods entirely, but the human body is a wild and wacky place where stuff that exists outside of the norms of what most people experience can totally happen. The doctors are aware of this, and it's just a good thing to gather information on to make sure that it's not the case complicating the tumor. So far, so good, doctor.
Your prolactin levels are very high, which might be caused by the tumor, unless another condition raise your prolactin, encouraging more growth.
These two gay dudes are pretty cute, and Rio confirms to us that during a trip a little while back, he didn't take his testosterone shots for a few weeks, opening up that possible window for him to be, okay, he is pregnant. They rush right into that one. No bickering about it. It's just that's just what it is.
But there's no way that...
You're pregnant.
But now the real story begins, because while people and medical personnel can be trans accepting, when it comes to hearing or seeing the direct information of a trans man being pregnant, a lot of those people do backslide pretty hard in their minds, thanks to an overwhelming association of pregnancy with femininity. An association which cuts trans men, but also cuts cis women and trans women too, thanks to the claims by people that the inability to get pregnant denies one womanhood. A cruel and frankly stupid as fuck metric, because all women are gonna end up being unable to get pregnant at some point. Like, it's pretty much inevitable thanks to menopause. Pregnancy is something that we need to degender, that we need to stop thinking of as a central part of womanhood. I know that it featured a lot in stuff like second wave feminism, which held a woman's ability to create life in this almost sacred perception, as a way of putting women up on a pillar. but that idealization of it is something that has come around long term to be damaging for a lot of people. Hopefully, this Good Doctor episode can do some work towards that. Oh, also, the critical race theory stuff is the other storyline happening here, around this black woman who is stoked that the team of people looking after and caring for her are all people of color, and presumably won't treat her in a way that some would describe as demeaning or condescending, but that I would personally describe as fucking racist.
My lucky day. 3 doctors of color taking care of me. Doctors who won't talk down to me.
For those on IMDb mad about this inclusion, where do you think that narrative comes from? Because the answer is from black people's lived experiences of white systems of power, a pretty well recognized thing for anyone who isn't, well, racist. Cry critical race theory all you want, but it's just what is happening. Back to the trans man storyline, and Sean Murphy is kinda back to his old tricks by asking the partner of Rio if he considered himself to be gay while dating a trans man. Something that he asks mid the other doctors discussing the pregnancy in relation to the tumor. Look, I get it. Sean is kinda clueless and constantly openly asking stuff because the information that he gets is meant to be delivered almost directly to that old white audience. That his development towards understanding is meant to mirror that of the old white cis straight people watching. The problem is that this isn't how a medical practitioner should act on the job, and these questions are questions that shouldn't be asked in any professional setting. Something that Sean Murphy should really have learned by this point based on all the times that people have told him it's wrong to do this.
Do you consider yourself gay?
I don't think that.
Yes.
Like, autism doesn't mean you can't learn social stuff when it's pointed out to you. Maybe it needs to be more clearly defined and explained why it's the situation, but trust me, autistic people can function just as well as anyone in society and learn social cues/social distinctions. Sean Murphy gets told immediately that yes, this guy is gay, despite the fact that he has vaginal intercourse with his fiancée. A statement that leads to Dr. Murphy getting yeeted out of the room as the patients look on pretty rightfully annoyed.
I
think you should leave.
I just want...
The lead doctor apologizes and says that it's completely inappropriate what just happened, which it is. Don't ask your patients private questions like this that have no relevancy to the medical problem that they are in the hospital for. Go and find some trans people who are willing to talk to you about it and learn from them, you damn shitty doctor. It's like the show improved, but Sean Murphy is still kinda stuck in his old ways of perceiving people as intrinsically tied from an identity position to their biological situations. A factor which I'm pretty sure we got some moral revelation on at the end of the last trans episode.
And what are you doing?
Understanding.
I guess maybe that one was just Dr. Murphy learning to use the right pronouns for people despite what is in their pants, and this one is going to be him learning that sexuality exists in a way that is not dependent upon what sort of stuff you are doing without your pants on, or what's in your pants, or something. God, I feel like he just needs to do some out-of-work research over a long weekend on gender theory and save all of his trans patients the trouble. But back to the gay couple. Rio and his partner have to make a hard choice of whether they want to go along with the pregnancy or not. A hard choice because what they pick will affect the treatment the doctors go with.
Our treatment plan for your tumor depends on your plan for your pregnancy.
This is a complex situation, additionally complicated by the being trans as well, and the fact that Rio would have to go off testosterone to continue the pregnancy, all of which the show presents and handles with the level of respect that it deserves. Frankly, when Dr. Murphy isn't on the screen, the whole show is very respectful, which is maybe ableist in how it's presented, like the one doctor who has a problem with understanding all this gender stuff is the autistic one. Not sure how I like that continual recurring theme, especially because of how inaccurate it feels to the overwhelming representation of autistic people within the trans community and vice versa. Rio wants to terminate the pregnancy because terminating it means that he gets to not go through 9 hellish months turned additionally hellish by some gender dysphoric elements, but also because it would mean removing the tumor is a minor surgery instead of a more major one. It's less risky for Rio if he is no longer pregnant. And at this point, we are sort of crossing over into that abortion issue stuff that is also a big deal in the US, where states have outright banned abortion in cases where it is the most viable option and what would clearly be more healthy for the pregnant person, both physically and emotionally. All because Republicans are ghoulish monsters who view a pregnant person as a receptacle for new life rather than, I don't know, an actual person. Oh, sure, it's more religiously complex than that, but boil it down and you end up at the exact same place in conclusion. It's also good to see that the fiancé for Rio is supportive here, though it does lead me to try and figure out who is the villain of this trans storyline. Like, previously, it was the non-supportive grandma of the trans girl, who was being a dick to the parents and the child, and had to learn the lesson of coming to see their grandchild as the identity she identifies as. How transitioning saved her and helped her flourish rather than shut down.
She hated it. She hated herself. She became reclusive, depressed.
Everyone is supportive and on board with the termination of the pregnancy. I don't really see how we stretch this out for another 20 minutes.
I've changed my mind. I want to keep the baby.
Oh, never mind. There it is. It's Rio himself who changes his mind and wants to keep the baby. Now we see our conflict between the partner who is worried about the complications that can come from the pregnancy and Rio, who, despite all of that, wants to go through with it anyways. It asks the question of, does the person who is not pregnant in the relationship get a say in this? Do they get a choice in this decision of having a family? Something that they might not be ready for or prepared to do, especially at the risk of their partner's health.
That still sounds dangerous.
I've made up my mind.
Do I get any say in this?
Rio gives us the emotional appeal of the episode. You can tell because the emotional music is playing, where he explains how, as a kid, a refuge that he found was hiding under a blanket with some stuffed toys, and pretending that he was a dad and the toys were his kids. That I guess there is some kind of parental element there to his gender identity that was a source of strength during a tough childhood period.
And I'd imagine I was the dad, and they were my twin little guys. Fraternal, obviously.
He wanted that fraternal piece, that connection of a bit of yourself in your child to you. Something that I personally don't believe in or care for. I think a child that you look after and raise is your child regardless of blood connection, but for some people that is a big deal that does have an impact on raising kids. And Rio put all this aside so he could transition, believing that it was impossible to ever do this again. And having this pregnancy has almost sort of reopened that possible door.
At least as far as them coming from me. But now, this is our baby.
At no point here do they make any of this come across as denying his manhood, as denying his role as a father. In fact, they tie the pregnancy to that fraternal possibility, which is good, because that whole degendering stuff that is not explicitly tied to one gender thing we talked about earlier on. The fiancé seems like he is processing a lot, and walks off to go and have a think, I guess, while Rio asks how soon the surgery can be done. This is the complicated intersection of two individuals here, and I don't think either is necessarily wrong or right. Rio is well within his rights to pick what he does with his body, and whether he gets to keep or terminate the pregnancy that he will have to deal with. But the partner, a guy called Eli. Fine, I'll say his name, okay? He's called Eli. Jesus Christ. Well, Eli has a right to not want to start a family immediately, and to not want to have this pregnancy forced upon him by an action that he didn't get the right to choose. This is something that either gets compromised on and resolved, or ends with them splitting due to the fact that they can't reconcile their differences here. And neither outcome is wrong or bad either. What I'm trying to get at is that it's so easy to break stories and people down into heroes and villains, good and bad, right and wrong. Oftentimes, with these interweaving narratives between two people who want what's best, there is the truth that moral binaries are not so clearly in play. Obviously, a person being a dick or using manipulative words and abuse to get their way would be the villain. But many cases like this one are not like that. Are just two or more people struggling to make what they think is the right choice for themselves and their partner. To distract ourselves a little bit, Sean Murphy is getting some action in his dreams, and that upsets him because he is dating a person right now. And also at the same time, he's annoyed because he wants to ask questions about the trans people, and if he doesn't ask questions about the trans people, then how can he understand the trans people and learn about the trans people? And all these damn people keep telling him it's inappropriate to ask questions about the trans people, and like, can someone at the hospital please give Sean Murphy the magical, wonderful key of you can ask questions of certain trans people who are okay answering them? Just like ask them if they feel comfortable answering your questions on that, and if they say no, you can go and find someone else. Seriously, stuff like the trans subreddits exist. Go ask on there. Hit somebody up that actually is open to talking about it. Like, surely that would be a helpful piece of information to relay to avoid Sean doing this in the future. But this whole thing gets us to a Sean and Eli scene together, with Sean managing to somehow open on a line that pisses off Eli even more than he previously did.
I read that cisgender people often reduce transgender people to their genitalia and that is offensive.
Yes.
At least Sean asks it so that he can apologize and sort of recognize where the flaw in what he was asking previously was, in regards to how it is biological essentialism and tied something to Rio's body. And it's understandable that Eli might be defensive of Rio here because that's his partner, and he's probably seen a lot of shitty transphobia directed at the person he loves. And then Sean Murphy comes in with the cisgender statement of all time for this situation, where he says that it's strange how Rio is doing all this stuff to be a man, and then picks to do the most female thing of getting pregnant.
Mastectomy and takes hormone replacement therapy, but now he is choosing the most female act.
See? I told you it was going to happen, and it sucks for Sean Murphy that he has to be the vehicle for the audience's misunderstandings to get corrected, because it makes his character come across as pretty insensitive almost all the time, and sometimes also very racist towards Muslims.
The fact that you're alive right now is evidence that you were working with dimethyl sulfate.
You're a terrorist, aren't you?
Thankfully, Eli gives us the clarification that Rio doing it makes it not a female thing, because he isn't a woman. Good man.
It's not female if Rio's doing it.
Yes.
And Sean agrees. He gets that, and understands that Rio must have dealt with a lot of prejudice, hoping that Rio has someone who can be there and help him through those hard times, like Sean had when he was younger and dealt with ableism for being autistic, and his brother helped him. Relating his own personal struggles to another's is actually kind of a step in a positive direction for the good doctor here. And while Murphy has definitely shown that he still has a few problems with trans people and with respectfully approaching their situations, I gotta say, It's a big improvement towards being accepting of them from the other trans episode 2 seasons back.
That's a penis. She's not a girl, he's a boy.
Things have only gone up here, and that's a great thing to see. It's a nice scene, and Murphy is helping Eli come to terms with being supportive of his partner through this discussion, even if it's not clear whether Murphy is intending it to do that or not.
He must have dealt with a lot of prejudice during his transition. Now Rio is having brain surgery.
I would like to believe that he did, because contrary to popular belief, I'm actually a glass half full kind of person. I like to see the best in people. Our gay guys get to reconcile. They have a big, lovely moment. And then complication 2 turns up, baby. There it is. There's the Good Doctor show I remember. These motherfuckers stack medical problems like they're building the Tower of Babel out of them. I wonder if we can possibly get 3 in one episode. It's actually quite likely, depending on how much time is left in there, and they need to sort of stretch it out a little bit, honestly. Anyways, Rio can't see now because the tumour is pressing on his optical nerve, which means they can't operate with the same surgery anymore. The doctors explain that now they have to go with an even riskier surgery that has longer time to bounce back, and they even mention the word gender dysphoria in the conversation, a word that rarely makes an appearance in these mainstream shows, so nice to see it mentioned here. And this raises all those same concerns. The same concerns that put the possibility of abortion back on the table. Because no trans person wants to feel dysphoria, wants to put that on themselves. And Rio makes the hard choice of wanting to keep the pregnancy, wanting to do the difficult thing despite how scared he might be of the cost that goes with it, as he seriously views this as the next step in his life, and he's been brave every other step so far.
This is my next step, even if I'm scared. You have to take risks sometimes, Dr. Lim.
I want to quickly dip into the other storyline here, though, to just present this scene, right after the black woman at the center of the story feels racially profiled due to hospital staff not believing her.
I apologize for your experience in the emergency room.
That's mighty white of you.
I can see why those IMDb people got so riled up. That absolutely would piss off bigots. The trans man on the other side, though, has his surgery, and oh no, something goes wrong. Do you hear that? Could that be complication free that I predicted was coming? My god, am I good at this? But this complication is actually mostly so it can lend itself to Dr. Lim's storyline, the hospital chief dealing with PTSD, and so she can have a bit of a freak out here while the other doctors are looking to her for confirmation on what they should do. I can't show too much of this visually because I don't want to have icky surgery stuff going on for people who might not want to see it, but trust me, all this does happen. I'm not lying to you so I can pretend I was right with the complications, okay? Dr. Lim pulls it together and says the medical jargon that fixes the problem. You know, medical shows, they always like to drop some esoteric word salad that I'm sure is totally accurate but means nothing to me. It just makes the doctor seem legit.
Your Doppler was negative
For deep venous thrombosis, so there's no need for chronic
coagulation or an IBC failure.
Your biopsy was, however.
Rio wakes up post-surgery and is totally fine because they were not gonna kill the trans man, were they? Are you kidding me? They will get fucking murdered, especially considering how little trans men get in regards to representation anyways, especially a pregnant trans man. They're not gonna kill him, Jesus Christ. But with that out of the way, it's now on to the next big part of this couple's lives. Being pregnant and having a kid. Rio is gonna have to learn how to be a pregnant man, how to deal with all of that in regards to his gender identity, and he is going to do it with a supportive partner by his side. A guy who has his back.
I've never been a pregnant man before.
You'll always be the best man that I've ever known.
That's a very positive and nice way to end things, honestly, in regards to the trans narrative of the episode. There's no quibbling or quabbling about the gender theory here. No stuff that backslides into cis perceptions or gives concessions to cis people's considerations like the previous episode. It's unabashedly pro-trans, and always presenting the trans man storyline, the pregnant trans man storyline, with the respect and dignity that it deserves, while still showing the information in a way that those unfamiliar could access it and learn from it. It's humanizing. It's good representation, and even the good doctor himself got better, learned to do better, improved how he interacts with trans patients, and has the language to recognize when he relapses into habits that are appropriate for the workplace or for his patients' comfortability. And that's the episode.
She pointed out I spent med school trying to make white people comfortable.
Now, you can kind of see where my conclusion already is with what has happened here, because I've already said it. I kinda laced it into my commentary while we reviewed what happened in the episode. But I do want to take this moment here to address a wider position that ties into the whole hullabaloo around the previous trans episode, and how people around the world came to perceive this show following the virality of some of its worst moments. What I am getting at here is that the dismissive and frankly not comprehensive way that many people engaged with this that led to them throwing this whole show in the garbage thanks to a few scenes that made it look totally bad is not helpful to the larger discussion around representation and towards giving audiences from backgrounds that might not see these minorities within their real lives some connections that have them question their biases and bigotries. I found this to be kinda true of the last Good Doctor episode, that beyond the memed half scene that blew up, it was trying actively to be kind towards trans people, and to include them in the conversation it was having, that it was representing the more difficult sides of trans issues in a way that hoped to provoke thoughtfulness amongst its audience.
Are you angry? Was that an inflammatory question?
I'd rather people ask questions instead of pointing and staring.
And for all those people who would dismiss the show out of hand because of what it did back there, and mock it because it didn't perfectly pull off a trans episode, I think they're gonna miss this one, where the Good Doctor successfully did a very respectful episode without any serious missteps in how it handled what was presented as right or wrong for characters to engage in around trans people. It also gave us an insight into an often mocked part of the trans community. I can think of how many times pregnant man is used in tabloid rags to drive engagement by appealing to this freak factor that they hope will get the cis people to come and gawk. The show takes that and then shows us the people involved. It shows us the humans at the heart of this issue and their lives, their thoughts, their feelings in a way that counteracts such mockery.
You must be scared. You shouldn't have to be scared alone. I love you.
I love you too.
That, for me, is a net positive and a good thing for a show to be doing. The fact that it's interweaved and presented much like any other story the Good Doctor would do is just another way in which it is doing it well. Because it doesn't present trans episodes as these special interest moments, but instead as just another story about another group of people. Just maybe one that the audience that watches this is not so familiar with. This ticks a whole bunch of boxes that I know a lot of you keep wanting to see getting ticked. And so we should appreciate this episode for showing how TV can handle the trans community well. Plain and simple, the Good Doctor did good. If you liked what I said, or like how I explained the episode, or enjoyed the way I do this, or just feel like my role as background noise was satisfactory, then consider giving this video a like, share, subscribe, comment, or go and check out my other videos. It's all stuff you can do. I don't think it automatically helps in the YouTube system, but I appreciate it, and I think that's more important really. If you really, really like what I do here, then the best way to show that is by subscribing to my Patreon, Ko-Fi, or here on YouTube, which is all linked below in the description, or like the button down there and stuff. Those in the $5 and up category should be scrolling past the screen right now. and I really do appreciate everyone on there for helping to fund what I am doing. YouTube is a pretty hard place to get decent pay from, and sponsors are unreliable for consistent income. So having a place that ensures I will get to cover my expenses like rent, food, power, and internet, all of which allow me to keep making videos, is a huge benefit towards keeping the channel going like it is. I never expected anyone to pay for what I make. I would keep doing this regardless because I enjoy making videos. But seeing all of that is so reassuring for me. It does help me think that some people like what I do so much that they want to see me be able to live off of it and to focus on it more intensively. So, yeah, I'm very grateful for this opportunity and for having an audience who is that committed to my work. Other than all of that, though, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day. Nay, a good day.